The House of Lords Select Committee on Communications has just produced a report on media convergence, which is the phenomenon of newspapers, online material and television all coming together so that the traditional distinctions between them have become blurred and are frequently unrecognisable to audiences. The effect of this has been that the traditional regulatory rules which applied to these different forms of media have become blurred and need to be examined and possibly overhauled. This is a very considerable challenge, which is the function of this technological change, which is one which has both very exciting possibilities for us as citizens of this country and for the country as a whole, but at the same time poses a number of real challenges. Perhaps one of the most interesting challenges, and one which we've focused on, is the fact that the rules relating to what you can say or do in the various different forms of media are quite different in a number of instances. And in a world where the distinctions between them become blurred, how do audiences know what in fact it is they may be looking at? It isn't necessarily obvious that a piece of downloaded video is not in fact television. And against that background, we have spent some time trying to see what we think might be the best approach for the government to adopt in response to these changes. And having thought about it for quite a bit, the conclusion that we've reached is that probably we ought to follow the lead of what, for example, has been happening in the cinema, where a system of classification and grading has been introduced so that it is audiences who know what it is they are going to be looking at. In addition, there is a further problem which is posed because quite a lot of what we can get through the internet in terms of this sort of material doesn't come from either this country or the European Union at all. It comes from elsewhere in the globe, where of course we have no standing at all. Now, one of the interesting things is that if you look at the way in which the new media are developing, you find that there are three distinct aspects to it. First of all, there are the creators. Secondly, there is the audience. And thirdly, there is an intermediary who brings the two together. And these intermediaries tend, but are not invariably, to be big global companies. And interestingly, they are developing their own rules and codes of conduct as to how they will conduct their businesses, because they have an interest in ensuring that the thing is in a form which is consumer acceptable. And we believe the right thing is for the government to try and ensure that the British people and the British perspective on these matters is drawn into their considerations of their business's policy. And in this way, we can try and bring about the way in which they conduct their business will run with the grain of what we in Britain would like to see in our media here. And against that background too, it's interesting that from a global perspective, it's generally accepted that Britain has a strong, high-quality media. And much of this is to do with public service broadcasters. And we believe it's very important that in the world that is evolving, we don't lose the contribution that they've made, which is a touchstone of excellence and a benchmark of standards for the rest of the industry which surrounds them. Now, who knows in the future what form public service broadcasting might take, or indeed who might be doing it. But we do think that it's important from Britain's perspective that we retain this as in the vanguard of what is being produced in this country. In addition to that, it's also important for all those who are involved in these industries that competition between the various players is fair, because that in turn matters to enable businesses to decline and grow according to the quality of the work that they're doing. And we are anxious that there should be slight tweaking carried out to the competition legislation in this country to rebalance slightly the current position, because we think there is an absence of clarity, which is important. So what happens next? Strictly speaking, in narrow procedural terms, the House of Lords Committee's report is addressed to the government, which will quite soon respond formally saying whether it agrees or disagrees with our recommendations. But perhaps more importantly, the government itself has said that it's going to issue a discussion document, a so-called white paper, quite soon about a number of these topics, and that it intends to introduce legislation into Parliament before the end of this government's session. In addition to that, a number of these things are also affected by what is decided at European level, and the European Commission is considering consulting further on a number of them. But also, I think we want to be clear about what we're not doing. We're not setting out a roadmap which will take us from where we are today to some kind of already identified promised land. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Rather, the way we think the government should approach these matters is in an essentially evolutionary, step-by-step way. And what we are suggesting are a number of little steps that could be the first move in that direction. And we hope in so doing that, we can retain the good qualities of what we have in our media in Britain today, but at the same time to enable them to adapt positively and constructively to the technological changes and economic and commercial changes that the whole internet revolution is throwing up.